Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is warning NATO that next year may be worse if other countries in the region come under Russian fire. He says it's a question of who is next after Ukraine, part of a new plea to the alliance for more weapons and funding to fight the war. World leaders are deciding on new defense strategies as they meet for the NATO summit in Madrid. US President Joe Biden says the bloc is needed now more than ever. Mr. Biden announced the deployment of added US forces to Europe. The troops will cover all domains, land, air, sea. Summit host country Spain will have 6 naval destroyers, up from the current 4. Poland will host a permanent headquarters for the US Army 5th Corps. Britain will have 2 additional F-35 squadrons, and Germany and Italy will get more air defense platforms.
There are meetings today. We're going to approve a new NATO strategic concept and reaffirm the unity and determination of our alliance to defend every inch of NATO territory. And Article 5 is sacrosanct, and we mean it when we say an attack against one is an attack against all, every inch.
And NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg says historic decisions will be made at that summit. The new strategic concept will address Russia's threat following its invasion of Ukraine and challenges posed by China. A US official says Beijing's burgeoning relationship with Moscow will be a key focus.
China is not an adversary, but of course we need to take into account the consequences for our security when we see China investing heavily in new modern military capabilities, long-range missiles, nuclear weapons, and also trying to control critical infrastructure, for instance 5G networks in our own countries.
Well, let's get more from Rosie Burchard. She joins us live from Madrid. Rosie, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has criticized the alliance of not doing enough. The alliance says that historic decisions will be made. Will some of those decisions include what more NATO can do for Ukraine?
Indeed, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has been addressing these NATO leaders and says they need to do more to help his country as it faces down those Russian attacks. So Zelenskyy says his country needs billions of dollars per month in financial aid, but also he's calling for more heavy weapons, military aid. And certainly leaders at this summit will be focusing on how to get Ukrainian forces upgraded from Soviet-era weapons to more modern arms to bolster their defences on the battlefield. Now, NATO allies are expected to pledge to keep up providing that military aid to Kyiv as this war continues, and NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg has given a very sobering warning in the past that this war could last for months, if not years. So they're looking really in the long term here. However, as we heard from Ukrainian President Zelenskyy, this is seen as not enough by Ukraine. It says it needs more support.
Finland and Sweden soon to be ratified as members of NATO. Is NATO bracing for possible retaliation from Russia?
Well, first of all, NATO leaders here are very happy about that announcement from Finland and Sweden, the announcement that Turkey had dropped its veto on their accession process. Several leaders welcoming that with warm words as they went into these talks. So the NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg saying this is something positive for the security of the Euro-Atlantic area as a whole. But you're quite right to note that this is something which will not be welcome news in Moscow. Finland and Sweden's accession would see NATO's borders with Russia double overnight because Finland shares a very long 1,300-kilometre border with Russia. And we've heard from one Russian minister quoted in Russian press as saying that this accession would not be something that brings stability to the region nor to Finland and Sweden. Of course, that's at odds with their perspective. They are keen to move forward with this accession. There were some retaliations perceived when Finland first applied to join NATO. Finland was cut off from Russian gas supplies, but that wasn't seen as a major issue for the country because Russian gas only makes up a small part of its energy mix. And when it comes to potential military retaliation, that, as far as the conversations I'm having with diplomats go, is not expected. Russia is seen as having its hands tied militarily very much in Ukraine, of course, where its forces are pursuing that war. So not not much in terms of military retaliation expected, according to diplomats I've been speaking to. But of course, when that formal accession happens, right now this is just one step along the road. When they formally join, NATO allies will be watching closely to Moscow to see what kind of reaction may emerge at that time.
Rosie Burchard, thank you. Rosie is in Brussels reporting on those key developments out of NATO.